Hello and welcome back to Khemia. Last we were introduced to Scipio, who's the protagonist, and two other characters who are new, sort of. Veritas, who is the advisor to Amicus on Khemian stuff, and Brunus, who is the Khemian ambassador, aside from Neferu. So let's continue. The suddenness of it all, and the odd sensation of seeing such a quick movement yet feeling none of it, makes my stomach turn. My body leans forward as if wanting to fall out the window, and I force myself upright before the others might notice. Luckily, Amicus and Veritas are looking out the window as well, seemingly untroubled. My sudden lurch gets the attention of those behind me, though, and Neferu gently holds onto my elbow. Are you alright? There usually weren't windows on the few transport ships I'd been on in the past, but now that I can see, it's almost like when I would go sailing with friends on the ocean and I would become terribly seasick. This was all at once, though. I'm fine. You don't look fine. The big Wolverine slides up next to Neferu, looking at me closely, which is exactly what I'd rather not be happening right now. Then the stars bend in the most queasy way imaginable, and I stumble to the side again. You are most certainly not fine. This is your first time in the stretch. Well, of course he hasn't, Neferu. The hell do you think? Neferu is moving away from the window, but I'm already looking away, horrified. Not by the stretch, but because of the feeling growing inside of me. I'm going to vomit in front of everyone. Somehow Amicus and Veritas have continued on their way, deep in conversation that I vaguely feel I should be listening to. But that will have to wait. I'm fine, just wondering where the lavatory might be. My voice is slightly louder than it should be, though Amicus must be louder, because I can hear him even as Neferu guides me through the ship. We're moving rather fast. Of course, the Khemian developed a better drive than the one the parents lent us. I allow myself to be pushed along until we reach a door that opens automatically without any panels being touched. This area is the living quarters. I'm not sure where you'll be bunking, but we'll be sharing this toilet. We move towards an even smaller door, one that does require the push of a panel. Considering the journey is only about 12 hours, it should be somewhat tolerable, I think. Do you need an anti-nausea medication? Too late for that. Neferu makes as if to follow me into the lavatory, probably wanting to help me, like last time. I'd rather he not see me like this a second time. I'm fine, I'll be right back. I quickly move into the little room, leaving a perturbed Neferu behind as I furiously stab at the panel inside the laboratory until the door slides shut. I stand over the toilet for several seconds, vaguely thinking to myself that this is hardly different from the ones on Ad Astra before what's in my stomach comes up. I'm in the laboratory for a little while, maybe about 10 minutes, embarrassed, but also grateful that I managed not to be sick in the corridor like my stomach wanted to. I'm running my paws under the faucet, cleaning myself under before the streams of water suddenly stops and an unfamiliar voice rings in my head, making me yelp out loud. Apologies, paw washing water limit has been reached. I stand there, staring at my own reflection in the mirror, deciding that what I'd heard came from within my head. But how? I feel myself start to panic just slightly before I realize that, like previous tech I'd interacted with, it must be from my lingua. So I respond. Yes? Who is this? I get an immediate response in return. I am Ahem, the state-sponsored AI of Khemia. Oh, yes, I know of you. I've studied... I stop trailing off, reminding myself that this is an AI, and it does not care that I've studied or anything at all. You have studied me? The AI asks after a polite pause. This is very odd. Of course it's odd that it's speaking directly into my lingua. Com was not able to do that, I don't think. But something else is even more strange about this AI that I'm trying to put my finger on. Yes, I did not expect you to speak through my lingua. It was a bit startling. Apologies, Scipio. I was converted to lingua-only use, unless advised otherwise. This is to protect the privacy of all that I am speaking to. I feel as if I would have remembered that bit of information if I came across it in my studies. It implies that the Khemians have learned how to access and manipulate the lingua directly. While it is impressive, it also rekindles the feeling of fear. What else might they be able to do if they can fully access the tiny piece of machinery embedded in my brain? Do we really know the extent of Khemian knowledge and power? Is it really possible to do such things alone without parental help? As I'm contemplating this, a hand fills the silence, like a sapient noticing a lull in the conversation. Are you finished? If not, I can provide you with water-free methods to sanitize yourself. Unfortunately, our water reserves are limited. No. I'm fine, thank you. You are welcome, Scipio, and it is a pleasure to meet you. You as well. I know what bothers me about this AI, aside from accessing my neurotech without my consent or knowledge. With Calm, I never feel as if it was truly intelligent. I never felt if it had thoughts or feelings as it communicated. I would say Calm is comparatively stupid, but he's simply a program that consumes information, analyzes, then outputs a sentence based on the information. This Khemian AI is something different, and I wonder how widespread it is on Khemia. The eerie feeling persists as I stare into the mirror, for some reason becoming suspicious of even my reflection, as if it's not mine. I look away and adjust my robes, trying to keep my emotions under control. Now is not the time to become paranoid. As I was taught during my diplomatic training, always be suspicious, but never paranoid. That only makes you appear more suspicious, and I have a feeling that being suspicious of mayors would be categorized by most as paranoid, if not psychotic. With that in mind, I look into the mirror one last time to assess the state of my facial fur before tapping the panel and stepping out into the corridor. Hello. I had jumped, and now I quickly smooth down my robes, a gesture that I feel looks inherently suspicious. Hello. I pause, trying to think of something to say, though I come up pathetically short, so I simply say what would be the most normal in this situation. Did you need the lavatory? No, just checking to see if you are well. You looked shaken a few moments earlier. As Neferu confirms the reason I thought he might be lingering here, I feel just a small flash of irritation. He's looking after me, which is kind and generous of him, as he has no reason to do so, other than gathering intelligence, of course. But it makes me feel childish, and considering that it is the opposite of how I want to appear, I would rather he not do it. I adjust my expression to appear more serious, but also calm. A cool, emotionless look. I am fine. Thank you, Neferu. Please do not worry for my well-being. I do not want to be the reason for you neglecting your duties. The look on Neferu's face is hard to describe. It's certainly not pleasant, and though he doesn't say anything, I'm taken aback, though I do my best to hold my own expression. Another moment of silence passes, and I begin to think over the Khemian etiquette, wondering if I violated some kind of social norm. Of course, Neferu would be understanding of such things, but considering that we are not on Ad Astra anymore, perhaps he is now less forgiving. Just as I begin to open my mouth to ask what the issue is, Neferu finally speaks.
I see. Very well then. I shall leave you to attend to your own duties. Apologies for bruising your wolven pride.
Neferu turns on his heels before briskly walking away. I stand there alone, the low hum of the ship's varying moving parts the only sound filling the heavy silence while I try to understand what just happened. I had acted within diplomatic norms. Really, any interaction among diplomats is normal as long as only words are used, and you never state your true intentions. Present an aurora of civility even if your intentions are clearly malicious or even barbaric. This was one of the main issues of pre-Drusus Ad Astra. Apparently, woven diplomats of the era routinely took swings at other siblings, and even amongst themselves when they became angry or offended. Despite this being over 10,000 years in the past, it is a reputation that we still cannot rid ourselves of. I suppose it's not helpful that our experimental attempts at a republic have resulted in brawls within the Senate in just the past year. I don't doubt that this was shown gleefully across the news channels of other siblings. While I might admit that woven hubris has been our downfall throughout history, I still do not take kindly to being looked down upon, like I'm some type of savage. We have our own culture, our own language, our own universities, from which we take bricks and smash in the skulls of the elite who suck the cocks of all those above them while raping the rest beneath them. And I feel that despite my admiration for Khemia as a whole, they have their own issues with hubris. Neferu is a clear example of that. Woven pride. The hackles along my shoulders began to rise and I worked to contain myself. What an odd and frankly childish thing for him to say. I suppose it's insensitive of me to act in such a manner towards someone who so recently called me a friend, but his reaction was oddly intense and irritating. What I realized then is that part of my mission is to gather intelligence from Neferu and even pursue a more intimate relationship with him. At least, if it appeared to be moving in such a direction, but considering what just happened. Not even 1 hour into my mission and I'm already failing. I stand there for a while in silence, wavering as if on the edge of a cliff before gritting my teeth and clenching my paws into fists. No, none of this. Either I will succeed or I will fail, but in both cases I will continue on and serve the Empire, all for the greater good of Ad Astra. So, pushing through the guilt and embarrassment and blinking past the blur of moisture in my eyes, I set off aimlessly, unsure of where to go, but just wanting to move. As I'm walking quickly through the corridors, I happen to glance out the windows, having forgotten about the nauseating bending light, and I feel my stomach lurch instantly. I'm still feeling motivated by the epiphany in self-determination. I tell myself in a low, stern voice, no. I force myself to continue looking while I walk, demanding my stomach to settle. No matter how insistent I am, however, it doesn't appear that I have gained voluntary control over the mechanisms that dictate nausea in my body. Already irritated by my earlier failings, I force myself to continue staring, feeling as if I'm punishing myself for being unable to handle the view. It's similar to when I experienced insomnia when I was first away from home at university. It was disturbingly satisfying to tell one's own body that it was its own fault for being so tired through the day classes and that maybe it should sleep next time. I do the same now, mentally sneering at my own roiling stomach for being so weak that it can't handle. My meandering thoughts are brought to a very sudden and rude end as my feet catch something on the floor and my paws flail out for something to grab. I yelp loudly before landing heavily on my side, my paw pads slapping the smooth, hard floor to keep from falling further. Rubbing at the left side of my hip, I look down at my feet in confusion. 3 metallic-looking containers sit in the middle of the corridor, and my foot had caught the corner of the one sticking out furthest. Huh? There's a heavy grunt that I recognize immediately, and Bruna sticks his head around an open door with a stern squint before looking down and seeing me. Skips, what the hell are you doing? My irritation and self-pity from earlier aren't helped by this new turn of events. I get to my feet roughly, likely flashing Brunus with my undergarments as I don't bother trying to keep myself decent. He is the type not to care anyway. Is leaving your belongings out for others to injure themselves upon a normal Khemian custom? Brunus blinks at me, probably due to the fact that he's never seen me in such a state. Huh? I'm moving stuff in right now. Is it a woven thing to not look where you're going? I'm simply curious as to whether or not I will need to be more careful if I want to return to Ad Astra in one piece. What in the hell crawled up your ass, Skip? I sigh and massage the bridge of my snout with both paws, feeling my stomach lurch again, exasperated by my falling. I don't know, Brutus. Ahem. Could I get an anti-emetic, please? Certainly. A drone has been dispatched to your location. Speaking of which, I just had to deal with Neferu biting my head off for being too fat. I turn my attention back to Brunus. Speaking of which, what do you mean by that? Speaking of things up your ass. Shit. Brunus winces. You guys are kind of uptight about that sort of thing, aren't you? I'm more annoyed that he's pointing it out, but as usual, my moments of frustration and irritation never last long. Already I can feel it running out of steam. It's difficult to be mad at Brunus anyway. Yes, uptight. Speaking of. Anyway, I am sorry that I snapped at you. I'm not feeling well. Yeah, looks like you ain't. Brunus watches as I'm suddenly distracted by a smooth, glossy black dome that levitates towards me, then extends a tiny white wafer. I take it with some confusion. Thanks? Do I need water or... Goes under your tongue. I try not to visibly blanch at the idea of letting vile medication sit in my mouth for several minutes. It's called sublingual. Get over it, Skips. Oh, alright. Anyway, what were you saying about Neferu being upset? I doubt he would purposefully criticize your size. I carefully drop the square wafer under my tongue, hardly feeling it land before I close my mouth and it dissolves instantly. Brunus shrugs. I don't know, honestly. I was in the hall bringing stuff in, and he told me to move and not take up the entire space or something. He scurried off before I could properly yell back at him. You two fighting or something? Brunus looks at me, waiting for a response. I point at my mouth to remind him of the medication while being simultaneously glad to have an excuse not to respond. Oh, you can swallow. It's made of some weird nanotech stuff that makes you absorb it like in a few seconds. Though Brunus doesn't sound very sure, he's surely right. While the route of administration might be different from anti-nausea medication I've had on Ad Astra, the side effects definitely are not. I feel a familiar fatigue set in behind my eyes, one that I associate with boding due to it being the only occasion I took the drug. While I'd rather be more alert, I notice that the nausea instantly is gone, and I'm glad for this Khemian nanotech. And though I expect the taste to be bitter and acrid, it is instead slightly sweet and almost non-existent. Fascinating. I say it to myself, though Brunus responds with a face of disgust. I'd rather feel sick than take that shit. Makes me want to sleep all day. Pop takes care of the motion sickness and all of the other problems too. The Wolverine looks down at the large crates. By the way, you're roaming with me. Already pushed your stuff in. I take a look around Brunus to peer inside to a small room with 2 beds on either side, one of which already has 2 identical metal crates next to it. Oh, thank you, Brunus. It only makes me feel guilty, knowing that he had hauled my belongings in first. Sure, don't know why they dropped all of our shit here instead of in the actual room though. Yo, AM! It's silent for a moment and I wonder if Brunus failed to summon the AI, but then I remember how it works. Give me some pap. They destroyed my stash on Ad Astra. Brunus gives me a knowing look. Probably destroyed by that asshole magistrate. I bet he's so high off his ass right now. For the sake of Ahotep. I'm confused by the sudden change in tone and then realize he's responding to something AM said. I suppose that there are downsides to having the AI only you can hear. You want me to list everything? Headache, backache, stomachache, heartache? Yeah, great. Thanks. Brunus turns its attention back to me and I look down at one of the crates. Normally, it would be levitating slightly off the ground through the use of magnets, though I suppose the floor is not compatible. Here, I will push this one inside. It sounds like you're in a great deal of pain. Brunus shrugs. I'll live. Just gotta give AM enough reasons to justify dealing it out. I don't mind you helping, though. I grunt as I slide one of the crates across the floor, wishing that it at least had wheels. Isn't drug use free and plentiful on Khemia? Brunus makes a snorting sound. That's what they tell you in wolf school? His knowing and condescending tone makes me furrow my brow. Instead of allowing my emotions to take control like I did after talking to Neferu, I take a deep breath and let the defensive anger flow out with it. Snide remarks about wolves are something I will hear regularly, so this is a good opportunity to practice separating my emotions from my work. Well, not told, but shown footage of addicted Khemians in the streets of the capital. Typical they'd show propaganda like that. Is it not true? Doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is what they're using it for. I decide to let the topic go at that point, feeling as if I'd successfully defended Ad Astra's reputation, at least for now. Brunus gives me a louder grunt as he follows me into the room, pushing the last crate. Anyway, it does seem like you are in a lot of pain. I come to a stop at the foot of what I assume is Brunus's bed, while the Wolverine follows shortly after. Huh, one sec. He stoops to catch his breath. Phew, if the eggs are bad, I just get a script from the palace doctor. My slightly strained breathing is dwarfed by the huffing and panting of the Wolverine as he leans heavily against the crate. I don't like him very much because not being able to feel pain is kinda scary to me, but like I said, it ain't bad. Brunus sits on the crate, his sizable rear covering most of it. Nah, well, Pap helps a bit with that. It's mostly mental shit, where it really does wonders for me. Keeps me sane, I think. Oh? How so? I try not to seem too interested. Even though we're not on Ad Astra, the idea of a psychoactive drug like this is frightening. Well, I guess it kind of makes everything make a little more sense. I guess it slows down stuff so I can think things through properly. It sounds rather nice. And what I like most about it is that it makes emotions feel more meaningful, I guess. I don't know, I never had to explain it before, it just feels good. I raise a brow. Doesn't that get in the way of your work? I know he smokes the pipe almost constantly, so while I can comprehend using it for leisure, but more important work on behalf of the parents? Well, that's the thing. I feel things better, it's easier to empathize, and that's important for diplomacy. I think wanting to inquire more about emotions and diplomacy, but I'm also unsure if I should be discussing such matters with Brunus. I'm spared the decision as a soundless drone floats into the cabin, this time extending a small black capsule about the size of my thumb. Brunus eyes it dispassionately before plucking the capsule rather aggressively from the drone. Thanks, this'll last me half an hour, Anyway, yeah. Brunus uses a flicking motion with his thumb to open the tiny capsule. You shouldn't let personal shit get in the way, but it's important to emphasize what the side you're negotiating with. I watch him pack the strange pipe contraption for a while, the Wolverine handling the flaky green concoction carefully so as not to spill any of it. Does it help with her distracting thoughts? I can't stop myself from asking. I have, for the most part, been able to keep myself in check for the better part of the 2 years. But the past hour has left me feeling as if I'm about to fall apart. I realize then how desperate I am for some kind of solution, a fix for this dysfunctional brain of mine. I suppose my approach isn't subtle, however. Brunus leans back and eyes me closely, his pipe held in one paw. It might. It's different for everyone, but I know people that use it to focus. You doing okay, by the way? Definitely. As you know, it's very illegal to possess such substances on Ad Astra, so I was simply curious about this part of Khemian culture. Brunus continues to study me, and I tried to keep my paws from fidgeting by clasping them together. Well, Pap is just a Khemian strain of Chronoma, which is native to Amorpha. It's kind of funny that it's banned on Ad Astra when you guys borrowed so much from the cats. Hehehehe. Brunus winks at me to lighten the jab, even though I'm too anxious at the idea of this plan to work myself up over it. Anyway, if you're really interested, I can take you to an Amorphan dispensary. The cats really know their shit when it comes to anything plant-related, obviously. They got a bunch of stuff that might be better for you. Well, I don't think I would. Brunus can clearly see that I'm interested, which only convinces me to back out of this odd, reckless attempt to fix myself. While I know that much of my education I received on the use of recreational drugs was simply state propaganda, I still feel deeply uneasy about it. Using a drug to patch over a mental deficiency like mine simply feels unwise. A few years ago, I once asked my doctor for an anti-anxiety script, only for him to tell me that he only prescribes sedatives to females. Even now, my cheeks burn at the memory. Just as I'm about to head over to my side of the room, however, Brunus sticks his pipe out towards me. Want a puff? I know it's not a wolf thing, but it'd be rude for me not to offer. I stare at the pipe for a moment, my curiosity rekindled. Besides, might help with your issues. If you've got any, of course. Not saying you do. I stand unmoving for another moment, knowing that the longer I do so, the more obvious my pup-like apprehension will become. So I make my decision and reach for the pipe nonchalantly. Well, my purpose is to understand the Khemian experience, so I suppose I should. I hold the pipe and realize I'm not exactly sure how I should proceed. Oh well, alright, just take a pull on it, into your mouth first, then inhale that, and hold it in for a few seconds. Burnus clearly didn't expect me to accept, and I feel some satisfaction at his reaction. I bring the pipe up to my lips, trying not to let it visibly tremble. I suck on the opening, hearing a soft hiss from the pipe, then a gentle warmth filling my mouth. As I take the pipe away from my muzzle, a long curl of white vapor follows it. Yeah, now just breathe it in slow. As Burnus talks, I suck in my breath through my mouth, and immediately choke and cough as the white smoke blasts out of my muzzle. Whoa! Burnus leans back and then forward to take the pipe from my paw as I double over and continue to cough. For a moment, I'm worried I'm about to suffocate because each time I take a breath, it hitches in my chest and comes back out in more coughs. But the next breath comes out easier, and so does the next. Burnus pats my back in the most awkward way before sticking the pipe into his own mouth. Guess you've never smoked anything before then, eh? I shake my head, too busy catching my breath to be able to tell him that smoking anything, even legal herbs, is illegal on Ad Astra. I sat down on the other crate, taking deep breaths and doing my best not to fall into another coughing fit. Well, probably best to leave it at that for now. Wait a few minutes and see how you feel. I nod, only now aware of the smell I associate Burnus with coating my mouth and the back of my throat. The flavor of it is rather sweet and not too terribly unpleasant. Still, the experience of my throat and lungs burning like they did just now leaves me unsure if I ever want to try it again. Burnus leans back, watching me carefully as if worried I might keel over. So, what do wolves do for fun in a place where everything's illegal? I rub my chest, leaning back as well so I can breathe easier. Meanwhile, Burnus continues to smoke his pipe, seemingly unaffected by the warm, irritating vapors sitting in his chest. We have alcohol. Saying this reminds me that after learning from the doctor that sedatives were a womanly medication, that I should instead go buy some cheap drink in the market. It certainly felt more manly, boldly drinking an entire tankard of toxic tasting ale while my friends cheered around me. And it did help, at least until I began blacking out from drinking too much, and that frightened me away from it. Probably for the best. Burnus makes a face. Blech, not a fan of that stuff. Makes me sick and gives me a headache. I don't enjoy it much either these days. I mainly partook to better match the mood of my friends on nights off. This was partially true, but not the main reason. It also hasn't been the same since... Well, nothing's been the same since. Why do I keep telling myself that? Before and after. I am a different person now. That Scipio died that day. Oh, I get that. And it tastes like shit. Sure, acquired tastes and all, but it all tastes the same to me, just different shades of shit. I feel that only now the conversation is beginning to feel natural between Burnus and I. Like a conversation between friends. It is unfortunate that I am unable to respond, because I am dead. I died. And now what is now? I feel an odd tingling throughout my body, along with a tickling sensation in my thighs and groin. The sensation is similar to the one I felt when I was almost murdered, and suddenly my heart begins to pound. Then I look back up to see Burnus staring back at me. I don't know why he's here, and suddenly very little makes sense. I don't know what's happening, but I'm able to sense that something is very strange at the moment. No, something is very wrong at the moment. At the moment, or is it forever? Skip? I jerk my head to look at him, trying not to appear as confused and disoriented as I feel. You feeling it? You alright? I watch the pipe bob up and down as he talks around it. I remember that in another time, or another dimension, I was on a ship in a warp drive headed for Khemia. I just had taken a small but intensely hot and harsh mouthful of vaporized pap into my lungs. It was only for a moment, no more than a second before I coughed it back out. I grip onto the cool metal edges of the crate, trying to ground myself, to hold onto something so that I don't drift into nothing. I try to remind myself of what is happening. This is Poppyway. How strange that my cognitive state is so warped, yet I can still think in such a painfully clear way. This is nothing like alcohol. Suddenly, I wish I had listened to all the warnings I've been given on Ad Astra. How some people were never the same after using certain substances, driven to insanity forever. I try to remember if pap was one of them, but a rush of fear begins to overwhelm me. I look to Brunus to calmly and politely inquire for assistance, though I'm not sure how I can be assisted. I need... Brunus' expression is hard to understand as context continues to escape my grasp. I am at least able to understand that his eyes are narrowed, looking almost suspicious, or maybe even malicious. Did he purposefully give me something harmful? He seems perfectly fine as he smokes the pipe himself, as if space and time are not breaking down for him. And yet, I feel as if I'm mentally decomposing. My frequent nightmares of dissolving into the amalgamation have suddenly become fully realized. Despite this, I try to keep my expression stoic, as a vague, past self version of myself reminds me not to jeopardize the mission. Or is this the future where I have already disappeared into the timeless, spaceless orgy of hellish agony? What do you need? Brunus's voice is oddly deep and resonant, and I shift backwards, unable to remember what I needed. He reaches out for me and I grab at his paw like it's a small flotation device in a vast sea. Don't bother trying to swim, little wolf. Your parents have left you to drown forever. A voice I've only heard in my dreams whispers directly into my ear. It's a real voice, not one that comes from my head or my imagination. It's a rustling of dead leaves, rattled out in the throat of something ancient and evil. I yelp and lurch backwards and suddenly feel the sensation of falling. I must have died. That is the only explanation for this. I am dead, and this is forever. The parents must be evil, if this is what they planned. Shit! Brunus's big, hearty voice cries out, and I'm at least comforted by the fact that he is here with me. His exclamation is paired with a jolt of pain that shoots from my head down to my neck. I lay on the forest path, having fallen from the branches above. I had prepared to jump down and surprise my mother. Instead, I had fallen and landed on my back. It was the worst pain I'd ever experienced. But throughout the pain, I watched Mother rush to my aid. She held me as I wailed, stroking my head. Ma! Suddenly, I'm back in this hellish metal room. Right now, all I want is to be back home. Shit. Send it right fucking now, Am. I want to be young and free from the prison my mind has become since the riots. I want to be a pup held by my mother, knowing that someone is there to help me whenever I fall. And now I'm trapped, completely out of my element, and there's no one to help me. I just curl up and sob, submitting myself to whatever this is, whatever existence has become. I don't fight the feeling of rough paws around me, picking me up and sitting me down on something soft. I look and see that I'm sitting on the bed with a big Wolverine in front of me. Hey, don't worry, kid. This'll help. But lift up your tongue for me, so I don't have to, please? Simply tired at this point, I do as I'm told, feeling something light and dry being set under my tongue. Okay, now, can you close it and, just let it sit there? Once again, I do as I'm told. The initial rush of disorientation has faded, and I feel that I'm attached back to reality, albeit with a delicate thread. The tightness in my chest eases and the feeling of grief and dread lessens. My breathing evens out as a warm glow replaces the emptiness in my chest. Alright, you're good now, right? I listen to the deep, hypnotic voice writing the smooth, melodic tones that I never noticed before. His expression is so full of guilt and worry that I feel as if I should be the one helping him. My thoughts are still scattered in every direction though, so I find it difficult to respond. Come on, Skip, you're scaring the shit out of me right now. Something heavy pats my cheek, then shakes my shoulder. I'm gonna get Neferu so he can, help you out, okay? But I need to leave for just a bit to find him, alright? Alright, be right back. Just stay there like that. I simply watch as the Wolverine backs away from me, his paws outstretched as if holding my figure together with his paws. Like I'm a delicate vase about to tip over. Again, his demeanor makes me feel as if he is the one that should be taken care of, but the sedative leaves me content with simply watching. Then I see him run for probably the first time ever before he disappears out the doorway, the heavy thuds of his footsteps fading away in the distance. With Brunus gone, I focus on the sound around me, appreciating their complexities, likely resulting from even more complex Khemian machinery. I know that what just happened was a horrible, even traumatic event, but right now I don't want to think of it. For the first time in a long while, I feel calm and clear-headed, even under the effects of PAP. I know it's artificial, but it's such a relief that I only want to relish it. I even smirk a bit at the situation I'm in right now, at the ridiculousness of it all. I need to talk to someone. I need to talk to Neferu. First, I would like to ask why the hell he became so angry with me. A childish part of me would even like to blame him for the state I found myself in. As I wait for Neferu, whose presence I long for, even if I'd rather him not see me like this, a new sound joins the cacophony of ship noises. Well, maybe not a noise from the ship. It seems out of the ordinary, especially compared to the other sounds, so I focus on it. I realize that it's coming from behind me, from the wall my bed is pushed up against. It's odd, almost like it's separate from everything else I'm hearing, in a way that is similar to Ahem. Could it be a type of interface picked up by my lingua? I wouldn't be surprised, considering the Khemians use it to broadcast their AI. I feel I should bring this up with Amicus, that he should first give consent before our linguas are accessed. Choice. A whisper of leaves. I'm unsure if what I just heard was real or not. So I crawl on my bed to the wall and press my ear against it, closing my eyes. The parents throw all to the sea without a choice. What? I whisper back, fascinated and slightly apprehensive. Does Pap make one hear voices? I hope so, because the alternative is frightening. And now you tread water, putting off the inevitable. I grip the wall tightly, feeling a prick of fear through the warmth of the sedation. How long do you think you'll last? Suddenly, imagery comes to mind in a way that is most unnatural. I see myself in profile, pressing up against the wall, while beyond, I see the shape of something dark and emaciated. It mirrors my position, its face to the wall as it whispers right into my ear. You're drowning, Skip. That icy fear climbs up my chest and my neck, and I start to feel as if I can't breathe. Everyone drowns in the end. And the end is forever. Skip? I open my eyes, still kneeling on the bed, ears pressed to the wall. Neferu's expression is one that confirms exactly what I feared. I do not belong on this mission. That is what the very awkward silence in the air tells me. I don't move, though I know I should at least pretend that I'm not listening to voices in the wall right now. Bruna stands in the door, looking over Neferu's shoulder, his expression even more dismayed than it was the last I'd seen him. Skip. Neferu repeats my name, approaching me cautiously in the same way that Brunus had left me, as if I might break if I moved too suddenly. I stare for a moment longer, then clear my throat and pull away from the wall as casually as I'm able to. Nonchalance is a difficult thing to pull off at this moment, especially when I realize that my robes are riding up near my hips from my unorganized clambering onto the bed. The two don't seem to mind, however, as I smooth them back down over my thighs and carefully sit at the edge of the bed. I clear my throat carefully. Yes? Still, my voice is cracked and broken, like I've never entered adolescence, and I swallow back some embarrassment. Are you alright? I try to find enough saliva in my throat to respond in a less broken way, but as I do, Neferu whirls on Brunus. I left him for literally 10 minutes. How did you manage to leave him in such a state in so little time? What? I jump, even though he's yelling at Brunus, mostly because everything still sounds oddly resonant. I try to cover this up by standing in one smooth motion. Unfortunately, my coordination seems rather miserable now, and I stumble forward slightly. At this moment, Neferu catches me, carefully pressing me back onto my bed. I am just slightly dizzy from the anemetic that AM gave me. I'm rather pleased with how well I'm able to put words together despite my disoriented mindset. Yes, I'm sure that is the only problem. Neferu glares at Brunus. Oh, come on. See, he's looking better by the minute. You're good now, ain't you, Skip? Yes, I'm in a state that is good. Well, you're hearing something in the ship? Are the sounds worrying you? Neferu gestures at the wall. Oh, yes. Neferu reminds me of what was just bothering me. Who's in the room next to us? I heard a voice. Wait a moment. No, I was definitely not supposed to say that. My mind is not working, especially the part that concerns memory, and though the sedative is powerful, I can still feel anxiety prick at the surface. There ain't no room next to us. Brunus, what the hell did you give him? Whoa, just the pap, and I guess one of those chill pills to calm him down a bit. You guess? What did you give Skip? Use the room speakers, please. I feel the fur on my neck bristle as the sound of Am's smooth, sapient-like voice drifts down gently from the ceiling. Scipio, do you wish to reveal your medical history to Neferu and Brunus? I stare at Neferu's chest in front of me for a moment, trying to keep my expression normal. Yes. Very well. Scipio was administered one anti-nausea wafer, 25 milligrams, and one anti-anxiety wafer, 10 milligrams, both within the last hour. He also inhaled approximately 1.75 milligrams of the psychoactive compound ANLA via vaporized poppy whey. I get lost in Am's rather beautiful voice, but he must be saying things that Neferu doesn't like because he keeps giving Brunus very cross looks. Are there any interactions among these medications? The antiemetic and anti-anxiety drugs can be potent sedation when used in combination. And anything that causes one to hear voices? There's a long pause, and for some reason, it is only now that I'm understanding how terrible this actually is. They think I'm losing my mental abilities, which is exactly what I feared. Psychosis is a rare side effect of the poppy whey consumption, of which auditory hallucinations can result. I see. Neferu glares at Brunus again. Do note that the side effect normally occurs at higher doses. According to medical literature, no psychosis symptoms have ever been observed in doses below 10 milligrams. See, he barely took a puff. I've never seen anyone lose it like that, even when they take too much. I frown, not necessarily liking the way I'm being talked about, especially with me sitting right here. But what about combination with other drugs? He seems barely able to stay awake. He's so sedated. Most people wouldn't even feel a thing from just one. Yes, but he's a wolf. He's never experienced mind-altering drugs, and I doubt that there's such a thing in medical literature about wolf intolerance to poppy whey. If that's all it takes to get him high, then why hasn't he ever freaked out after just sitting next to me? I mean, has he ever really sat next to you? If you did not know, Pop smells terrible. He likely moved away from the moment you got close. They go back and forth, and I close my eyes, beginning to imagine their voices in a sparring match. It reminds me of the one time Neferu managed to convince the Wolverine to spar. Despite his build and size, Brunus isn't much of a fighter. The match barely lasted more than a minute before Brunus was on his knee and retching so loud he sounded like a giant squawking bird. I laugh loudly. The voices go quiet again. I open my eyes and look back at them. At this moment I decide that I'm tired of being gawked at. So I clear my throat again. Did you know that it's rather rude to talk about someone who is in the same room in a way that suggests that they are not there? They continue to look surprised until Neferu seems to break out of the trance. Yes, sorry about that, Skip. You know that Brunus and I often get into it. Well, discuss something that does not have to do with me then. I am very tired, so I'm going to lay down now. Ah, I see. Are you sure? I am fine. It's best not to worry about me. I have expected Neferu to become angry again, but he doesn't. I feel a semblance of guilt under the drug haze, but I earnestly do just want to lay down. So that's what I do, the vague guilt morphing into some smug satisfaction at seeing the two of them left to awkwardly stand about. It's nice not to be the one that's feeling off-kilter. I think that they've left, but their voices mumble back and forth for a while, then it goes quiet. And then I fall asleep. I have extremely vivid dreams. First of my childhood. I began attending an elite school when I was 13. I was very sad to leave my mother and my friends in the coastal town that I was born in. Still, I was told it was necessary, that my mind was gifted and was destined for greatness. In the end, I found out that while this was true for most of my classmates, it was clear that I had been admitted for other reasons. My first day, the instructor called on me to solve a problem using maths that I had never even heard of in my homeschooling. He framed the problem within a scenario that involved the rich families and their youngs living on estates. The solution to the scenario was the amount of money required to bribe a local official who would then secure a spot in an elite school for one of these rich pups, thus making his point. I was there because my family had connections, and more importantly, because they had money. Money that was being wasted on a stupid, average-brained pup that could only answer questions with, "I don't know," while trembling in fear. Then, during mealtime, my mane was pulled, and I experienced my first physical fights, ones that ended with me curled on the floor, covering my face. The experience was humiliating, traumatizing even, but as I sobbed quietly in my dorm room alone, wondering how I could possibly survive another day, I became angry. I knew very little about my father at the time, but I did know that he was a figure to be proud of, a professor of rhetoric. The proudest of woven disciplines, one that no sibling could match, not even the Khemians. So I knew I had every reason to be proud of my family name, and I had every right to be in that school. At the beginning, my instructor devoted 5 minutes at the end of each class period to humiliate me with questions he assumed I would not know the answers to. He likely hoped that I would quit, but instead I studied and used what I learned to fight back. Within a month, I was answering more than half the questions correctly, and that's when he stopped. I mentioned his name to my mother in one of my letters, and within weeks he was gone, fired by the headmaster who my mother knew very well. As soon as my mane was touched, I would swing as hard as I possibly could, fracturing 2 jaws before the attacks stopped altogether. Eventually, I was at the top of my class, and by the time I graduated 5 years later, I was accepted into the most prestigious university on the moon. This is an odd dream. It's more of a narration of my past life. But it's important, because I fought hard to be here, and I'm beginning to realize that while I believe those troublesome days of my youth to be over, that might not actually be the case. I need to fight now, for my family's sake and for my own. I see myself curled up, sobbing after smoking Brunus's pipe, and I sneer in a way that feels very unnatural. But it feels good. As these images of my childhood fade, I remember that the school I attended to on the outskirts of Lux no longer exists. Almost a decade after my graduation, on the same day my life changed at the university, the school was burned to the ground by the mob of men from Lux. I never researched the aftermath because while I know most of the pups got out, some of them did not. Because of the men who saw their gifted minds as threats. Just like the men who tried to kill me. And while I have tried to understand the plights of those who are poor or less educated, I sometimes find myself doing the opposite. Those men are beasts. Violent, stupid beasts who could not reconcile with the fact that they were, in many ways, innately inferior. And that made me, my peers, and my professors a threat to them. This is an incorrect way to think, I know. Yet, if I were to strip away all the etiquette, all the structured thinking that comes with being an academic, I would want to do the same to places like the Clay District, where most of the men came from. I would like to razz the degenerates, disgusting places filled with degenerate, disgusting people to the point that it would seem as if it never existed. Like removing a stain from the fabric of Adastrian society. I want to tear them apart. Because my friends, my professors, and parts of my mind have been torn apart. And because the pups burned in the outskirts of Lux have been torn apart. Dissolved into the horror of the amalgamation, they were themselves torn apart before they even knew who they were meant to be. What is this? This disturbingly lucid dream. Is this a dream at all? I stare out into the vast stretches of space in awe of the size and the simple fact that the universe exists. Vaguely, I wonder if I have died, as if the moment I smoked the pipe I actually did die. Or maybe our ship somehow crashed and I've been left to float through space forever. Or for only a few more seconds before I suffocate. That would be alright, I decide, even as I take a deep, easy breath of air. I would rather feel this way, insignificant and meaningless against the monolithic oppression of the universe. It makes me feel oddly peaceful. My goodness, Scipio, if only your friends and colleagues could hear half of what you think. You sound a bit unstable. A deep but feminine voice comes from seemingly every direction. I look around, suddenly feeling as if I'm being spied upon, wondering if the directionless voice is from my own head. What? Amicus would not be happy to hear you wish to razz an entire district to cleanse Ad Astra of its lower class. The fur on my neck prickles. I still have no idea what's happening, if this is truly a dream, or possibly even another side effect of the drugs. I didn't mean to think those things. I don't truly believe them. I mean... There's a deep raspy chuckle, one that I recognize as distinctly feline, the one I've heard many times from recordings that involve Hindos. And I don't believe that, young wolf. And good guess, especially for someone who's never met a tiger. But can you guess who I actually am? Her eyes are so piercing, so intense that although I want to ask again what exactly is happening, I feel obligated to answer. And so I quickly run through the list of tigresses I know of, only one of which is alive, the current ruler of Hindo. Maharati Arti? The tigress eyes me closely so that I lower my ears, just wishing that I can wake up soon. Consider the impossibility of where you are. Do you think Artie could try to come all the way here to talk to some pup? I swallow hard, trying to keep my breath even, because whatever this is, I think this is somehow real, which makes the possibility that this being can read my mind all the more disturbing. But there could be an explanation. Are you Mara? The quiet smile on her face answers my question. Well, I suppose 2 attempts is not terrible, though I must say that the human knew immediately. Amicus is human? If that's how you refer to him, yes. My explanation is seeming more likely, but I can only imagine why it would be the case. Mara stays silent, though the knowing look on her face tells me that she's waiting. Are the parents doing this? Are they making contact with me? Just like it is rumored that they did with the human. Mara is quiet for a while, so I stay quiet as well, unable to think of any reason for this to be happening if it really is happening. The parents are complex matter, Scipio. Direct communication with them is impossible, unless they break their own rules involving interference. I try to think of something else to say, but it is clear that Mara is holding back information. Instead, I try to be more direct. Why did you bring me here? Is there something that I'm supposed to do, or maybe you have instructions? Well, Scipio, I heard you. You are in need of guidance. You are wounded, but in a place that cannot be physically treated. Mara taps a finger to her head. You fear death. You fear the amalgamation. Rather, you feel it is an abomination, and deep down, though you will not admit it even to yourself. My hackles won't stay down, and now I just want to wake up. You do not trust the parents. Am I going to be punished? They know I'm a fraud on a mission to further parental agendas when I don't truly believe in them. I'm only here for selfish reasons. I realize my legs are trembling. Please wake up. Mara raises a paw. Easy, young wolf. I am only here to help you, to warn, and to advise. You need guidance, and I'm here to offer it if you're willing to take it. I frown and rack my brain for lessons I had on Mara, if she was ever used in such a manner in the past. Her main purpose was that of self-sacrifice, to push Drusus into the correct direction for the Empire. She has little to do with the parents. As far as I know, it is only the monitors that communicate for the parents. Does that mean that this is not sanctioned by the parents? Yes, and do not be afraid that you are not in lockstep with their vision for the future. I certainly am not. I never entered the amalgamation, as I believe that it is an attack on life, rather than a preservation of it. And, in the end, neither are they. They bicker just as much as the siblings. The borders of the odd in-between world begin to shimmer and fade, and I realize it's ending. Wait, please, you say that you did not have to go to the amalgamation, that you can fix me. Please, don't leave me yet. Mara smiles at me, at my desperation that I know must look like unhinged. But I truly am desperate. This will not be the last time we speak. Trust that I will appear again when the time is right. This was merely an introduction. Okay. Thank you, Mara. It was a pleasure meeting you, Scipio. Until next time. I slowly open my eyes. This time I know I'm truly awake. Despite being slightly groggy, I feel that I'm mostly back to normal. I assess everything slowly, not wanting to make any sudden movements in case I'm still under the influence of the drugs. But again, all seems normal. I make a movement to sit up, and that's when someone besides me shifts. I gasp quietly, jerking my head in the direction only to see Neferu there, sitting on the floor with his back against my bed. I rub my chest reflexively, wondering why I'm so on edge, but also remembering that I had some very odd dreams that I can't quite remember. Sorry for startling you, and apologies if it seems that I'm still treating you like a child, but unfortunately, after what happened, I needed to be nearby. For my own peace of mind. I shift and turn over so that I'm facing Neferu more directly, simultaneously pulling back the covers as an invitation for Neferu to sit, which he does. You didn't have to sit on the floor. We've shared a bed before, in both ways. Well, yes, but you seemed upset before we went to sleep, and I feel it's rude to impose without asking in the first place. Well, now you know that you are always welcome, unless circumstances really change. You seem to be in good spirits, the way you always seem to be before this mission. You say that as if it's been a long time. We're not even a day into the mission, Neferu. Neferu is correct, though. For some reason, I'm far more optimistic now, more confident, more... Suddenly I have some recollection as to what I dreamed, or didn't dream. It does feel like a very long time, and like it or not, what has happened to you since is very troublesome. Are you alright? Neferu catches me not really paying attention as I revisit this dream, or even a vision, of Mara. Sorry, was just thinking back to what happened. Yes, it was somewhat ridiculous, but I think I have my mindset in order once again. That's good to hear. However, mental relapse is something you should expect to happen. Not that I want to bring your spirits down, but when it does, please do not hesitate to talk to me. I nod, though my mind is still on the vision. Part of me worries that it might be part of the delusion due to the drugs, and I especially don't trust my interpretation of what's real when I was just hearing voices. However, Mara had said something about the human meeting her, and Neferu knew him well. Perhaps he would know something about this, or perhaps even Amicus, though I admittedly have a strange but discernible feeling that that might not be the best idea. I don't know why, but a hopeful part of me wishes that this might be guidance Mara spoke of. Despite my doubts, however, the potential that somehow an entity that avoided the amalgamation is trying to help me, well, it's left me in a good mood. I take advantage of that to try and fully mend my friendship with Neferu, though I feel it's not necessary judging by how he's acting. And I'm sorry for pushing you away earlier. I could tell that it was hurtful and I didn't mean to be. I simply wanted to appear less weak during a moment of weakness. Ah, you need not apologize. That is my own fault. Oh, how so? In the back of my mind, I remind myself that despite the intimate, close feelings I have with Neferu, this is all still technically a game. I should be calculating the best way to establish a relationship that Neferu cannot be without, even if Khemian itself is at stake. Veritas told me earlier that this is an especially promising exploit, considering Neferu's relationship with his family. This is my job as a diplomat, but right now I'm following my emotions wherever they take me. This is not how a diplomat should do their job. Still, this feels like the right path, and I imagine there has to be some level of genuine emotion involved if I'm to be my most effective. Neferu looks at me candidly, setting his lips to a thin line. I don't often like talking about it, but after how I treated you, I owe you. So I once knew an amorphin by the name of Alexios. Oh, you knew him personally? Alexios, the pet of Cassius, Amicus's brother and one-time false emperor. Alexios was an agent of Amorpha, sent to Ad Astra to sow chaos in the very fabric of our society, a mission he was ultimately successful with. One could say he is the main reason for the riots occurring. Well, I knew him, but I doubt anyone knew him personally. Anyway, despite nearly toppling Ad Astrian society, he was never a very good spy. He was simply underestimated. And he struck Cassius's fancy. It's easier to be a spy when you have a connection to the very heart of power. I keep a straight face, but I can't help but wonder if Neferu is emphasizing this on purpose, because he sees right through me. I see. Well, whenever he found himself cornered, he'd often fall into a bit of a peculiar state of mind. He would dampen his expressions and exhibit the emotional capacity of a rock, a classic diplomatic defensive maneuver he often deployed to get out of situations he did not like. He is possibly the most evil, amoral creature I have ever had the displeasure to know. To be clear, I knew he was a spy, just as all governments know that visiting diplomats have ulterior motives. But what I didn't expect was a sniveling coward, willing to destroy the foundation of an entire civilization costing thousands of lives. I nod, though not having known the cat, I feel a bit detached. Omorpha has always loathed Ad Astra, as they see us to be the biggest threat to stability in the Galaxias. With all due respect to Amicus, I had always seen the situation to be the fault of the Imperial family for allowing an Amorphin to get so close in the first place. Anyway, when you came out of the lavatory, the look you gave me was strikingly similar, and I simply know that's not you, Scipio. You are good, honest person, and I know that you would never do something for the sake of destruction. And I know that because you are my friend, and despite our differences of culture and language, and especially considering the history between our people, I trust you. There is no doubt now that Neferu is expecting me to read between the lines here. And so, based on everything I know about Neferu, I do just that. Know that you're here to gather intelligence, to better Ad Astra's position in the Alliance, and to use me as a tool, just as Alexios used Cassius. I am lonely, and I need someone that I can call a friend, a true friend, and in this relationship I know that you have nothing to lose while I have everything to lose. But I also know that you are full of compassion, and that you would never do what he did, and so while I know that you can't be trusted, I trust you. At least, I hope that's what he thinks of me. I look Neferu in the eye in what I hope is a meaningful way so that he might know that I understand. And I trust you. I simply want the galaxy to find peace and happiness for all. Then I feel a bit uneasy, because I remember those thoughts that I had in my dream that felt alien, as if they weren't my own, but familiar, like they simply kept them hidden from myself. Like removing a stain from the fabric of Ad Astrian society. Could I really think such a thing? Thank you, Skip, truly. I have a feeling that this experience will truly change your life and your perspective on life itself. Ad Astra did that for me, both for the bad and for the good. So just keep an open mind. And like I said, I am always here. There's a soft chime as suddenly a hymn comes over the public speakers. Exiting Stretch Drive in 10 minutes. Prepare for security check and royal escort. I guess I slept longer than I thought. Not a surprise considering the sedation, but now I'm fully awake. I see a vast moon below me. Planet, I mean. Khemia is a planet after all, several times larger than Ad Astra. At one point, most of the land was inhospitable desert, but through years of investing and building high-tech infrastructure, along with slightly altering the environment of their own planet, something no sibling would ever risk trying, most of it is now populated. I stare down at the place that I've been so fascinated with since I was young, and found those picture books in my library of that school for the gifted. From this distance, it is a bit strange to see such an unexciting looking planet. No one would ever have guessed that the most civilized civilization in the galaxy exists on the surface. At least, if they somehow were able to avoid seeing the vast numbers of spacefaring ships flying back and forth. A few ships that have to be several kilometers away still look impressively large, which must mean that they're gigantic. At that moment, I realize that I'm seeing something I've never actually studied. The space cruise resorts, each the size of a small city, taking Khemians and many other children and siblings on affordable high-tech vacations. My feeling of wonder only multiplies as I remember that the earliest Khemian history is rather bleak. Despite having civilizations before even being uplifted, there was a constant war between what were known as the Water Kingdoms. The planet was always at such a high risk of drought that the security of water always determined influence, power, and future stability. But, as they always would, the Khemians overcame it. Meanwhile, I stand with my face pressed up against the glass, gazing out at the amazing things I can see, all things I studied for so long. Despite the many rough patches that I had encountered over the course of my journey, this view suddenly makes me realize something. I've made it. After years of hard work and intense competition, I finally made it to my destination. My mission is far from over, of course, but now I can actually see it. My goal is right there, below me. Not only that, but I might be the first wolf in decades to have this view. For a moment, reality seems fragile again, but in a way that's euphoric. I very much hope that I am not dreaming. You like staring at boring things, kid? Everyone's jealous of Khemia, but damn, it's ugly from up here. I twitch my ears in acknowledgement of Brunus's teasing, but I continue staring, wanting to imprint the view into my long-term memory. It's a sight that I'll likely never have again, especially if our departure has us facing the opposite direction. Khemia is the subject of his study, Brunus, and the first time he is seeing it in person. I know. It's still just a ball of sand, though. At least Ad Astra looks pretty from above. I do somewhat agree there. There isn't all that much to look at. Meanwhile, Ad Astra has plentiful diversity and seasons to take advantage of. By all measures, Khemia should have been behind the rest with the terrible start they were given. But once the parents established contact, the jackals unified faster than any other sibling, fully committing themselves to the parents' vision. This led Khemia having an edge over all siblings ever since. And all of this legendary history took place right there, on this planet. I smile. When a university student chooses Khemian culture as their discipline, they must have at least one course on Ad Astrian culture that emphasizes the best of Ad Astra. And despite knowing it all to be blatant propaganda that was so clumsy it usually just left me feeling embarrassed rather than proud, there was a value that they managed to instill in me. One should always be wary of complete submission to a higher power. This doesn't include the Emperor, of course, but rather it was targeted at the parents. There is a certain amount of pride that comes with being the most rebellious sibling race, though the Omorphans might hold that title now. But in the end, we paid dearly for it. And despite that propaganda-instilled pride, I could only stand in awe while staring down at the home of the jackals, the siblings that are one step away from parenthood. Despite not having set foot on the planet yet, I'm already extremely envious of these beautiful ships, and I can only wonder where Ad Astra would be if we cooperated better. Neferu and Brunus talk amongst themselves, leaving me to absorb the moment. It's only snapped me out of it when I hear Veritas with his reedy, rapid-fire voice nearing the spot where Neferu and I stand. Meanwhile, Amicus's deeper, calmer tone gives one-worded answers. I finally pull away from the window in time to see the two of them come around the bend of the corner, Amicus looking annoyed, while Veritas looks a bit excited and agitated. Massive! Jackals spread all over the land, and all sustained with renewable energy and recycled water. Indeed. Then Amicus spots me and perks up. They've bested their own planet! Yes, Scipio, I wanted to. They've harnessed the power of their entire star in a structure hundreds of times larger than their own largest construction projects. Veritas, please. Imagine if we could even achieve a fraction. Veritas, stop for a moment, please. Of course, Amicus. Hello, Scipio. I have just come to learn that we will be meeting with the Pharaoh upon landing. It would be best to go over our objectives one final time before starting our assignment. And that is the end of Chapter 2. And I will obviously continue this, once more content is released. Obviously. But yeah. We got more backstory for Scipio, where he's an elite that went to school, and he's educated, but he kind of has that sort of how to put it. If you've ever met like a rich, smart person, and I'm not saying that all of them are like this, but that kind of thinks that they know more than they actually do. Or they kind of have this sort of strange opinion about how the world works when in reality it doesn't work anything like that. But anyways, yeah. Thank you so much for watching/listening. And if you would like to play any of the Echo Project games, there will be links down in the descriptions, as always. And if you would like to support the Echo Project, then by all means, go down to their Patreon and subscribe to them. You'll get early access to all of their projects, and you will get access to the short stories for Echo and some other little goodies. Eventually, when Arches comes out, which is the prequel, no, not the prequel, the sequel to Echo, then you will get access to that before everyone else. And you won't have to wait for me to narrate it, because I'm probably going to wait even after I get it from their Patreon. But anyways, I guess I will update this when an update is released. And the only update that has come out right now is the one for the smoke room for Nick's route. So hopefully Jenna's route update and this has an update soon, because it's already past the end of January. Hopefully they release something soon. They don't make me wait 1 month. Or I should say they don't make us wait 1 month. But anyways, I will see you guys next time then. Bye-bye.